Motivational theory.
The five pillars, yes.
Number one, curiosity. Passion is number two. Number three is purpose. Number four is mastery. And number five is autonomy. Greetings, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fluency podcast. Today, we will be talking about maintaining enthusiasm for learning English. My name's Liam, and this is my good friend.
Ramps. And
Yeah.
welcome, guys. Lovely to be here. I love the enthusiasm, man.
Well, I'm motivated. What can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we start? This is quite a big question. How to maintain your enthusiasm for language learning? Is this a question a client has asked you in the past?
I think motivation is something that I talk about a lot with people generally, just because it's a huge part of improving from B2 plus. You have to do a lot of work to get through the higher levels of English. If you want to sound like a native speaker, if you want to be a C2, it's an awful lot of work. And maintaining motivation within that is incredibly difficult. So I always like to share the pillars of motivational theory with people so that they're aware, so they can start thinking about, okay, how do I continue with my practice? How do I continue to improve? There are five pillars.
I was about to ask, yes. You
Yeah, I could
mentioned
say,
pillars. Oh, yeah, you could
I'm
tell that I
jumping
was
in.
it.
I'm going. I'm ready to go. Right?
I
Yeah.
could, yeah, you fight, man. We should probably change your name from Liam to Mr. Fired Up or Liam Fired Up.
It's ironic that my surname is Pace in English, but in Italian is Pace. It means peace. I come to these podcasts. I'm not really that peaceful.
You're all about the pace, all about the speed,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
velocity.
This is the English Liam here, not the Italian one. So
Yes.
yeah, so motivational theory.
The five pillars, yes,
The
please. The five
five
pillars.
pillars. Okay. Number one, curiosity. Being curious about a subject is super important to remain motivated to learn about it, right? Passion is number two. Number three is purpose. Number four is mastery. And number five is autonomy. Okay. And each one stacks on top of the other. They feed into each other. So if you want to maintain motivation for anything, but particularly for learning English, you start with curiosity first. You find the subjects that you're interested in, the things that you would talk about in your own language, that you want to explore, you want to learn more about. At this point in your language journey, your language is good enough to explore those subjects in English. And you're going to develop the language to speak about those things that interest you. Once you've established the things that you're interested in, the things that you're curious about, then the curiosity turns into passion. Passion is incredibly powerful driver for learning, especially, but for doing.
I think curiosity is the ignition that lights the entire process. I would
Absolutely.
argue that a variation helps a lot in maintaining enthusiasm.
Varying the things that you're curious about, answering those unanswered questions. These are things that really help people with continuing to explore the language. I think one of the most difficult things that I notice from working with people every day is that they get very good at speaking about their job, because most people, they're professionals, they're using English for work. And maybe when they travel, but most of the time they're talking about their work. You start asking them to talk about other subjects and they're like, oh God, I don't know the words, I'm uncomfortable, etc., etc. One of the things that we have to do as coaches is, okay, point them in the right direction. What do you want to speak about?
Exactly.
Okay, what are you curious about? What are you interested in? What's fun for you to learn about? And then you push them in that direction because, like you say, curiosity is key to every other stage for maintaining your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And even when things are difficult, when you don't have much time, when you're tired, whatever's going on in your life,
I think
maintaining that motivation to keep doing it, you have to be interested in what you're doing. There has to be a reason why.
I think we could even take a step back. It is really from the beginning that you set your why I'm doing this, that the motivation is sort of started. What your job is then to do is to maintain it. And the only way you're going to maintain it is if you do the things that are in line with the goal that you'd like to achieve. The great thing about motivation is if you continue to do the things that you're supposed to do, that feeds the motivation. You keep doing it because you have done it. You did it yesterday, so you're motivated to do it today. And then over time, that builds momentum. And once the momentum sets in, then it becomes an ingrained habit. So it
Yeah.
takes far less time to achieve higher results than it did before. This is something that I actually got directly from the compound effect.
Okay.
I was listening to it a little bit earlier on in preparation for the chat, and I was thinking about motivation as I was listening to it, and
Hmm.
it just it clicked. Once
Right.
the momentum is in full swing, it's no longer something you think about. It's just part of who you are and what you
Absolutely.
do.
And we
Um,
spoke a little bit about this in our habit formation video,
yeah,
creating a daily habit and the importance of it contributing to you being a person that speaks English rather than doing it to get better at speaking at work, right? And the whole concept of why am I doing this ties into purpose. Your why is often about something bigger than yourself, contributing to the greater good, having a huge life changing, world changing idea is what your sense of purpose is. Doing it so I can get promoted at work, this is a finite goal, right?
yes,
It's a very small piece of the puzzle that is your life. Whereas I'm learning English because I want to work for the UN and change the world. That's a much bigger thing. That's a much bigger driver than
it helps
anything
fuel
else.
the motivation
Mm.
a lot more. I think that's why I'm saying what I said before. The motivation is strongly linked to the why you're doing it.
Hmm.
Um, if it's very clear why you're doing it, then I don't think you struggle as much with it because it's a motivation itself. I think it's finite, but I think
Absolutely.
we've drifted a little bit away from the four pillars. You were actually explaining the four pillars before, no, the five pillars, pardon me,
Yeah.
of motivation, right? So
Well,
should we start from pillar number one, just because we digressed a little bit? We
with
curiosity, yeah,
curiosity, passion,
passion.
curiosity drives passion. The more you learn about a subject, the more passionate you become about it. Those then move into purpose, feeling like what
Okay,
you're
so we're
doing
actually not
contributes. No,
drifting away at all. Pardon me. I stand corrected.
somebody's not actively listening today.
I am actively listening, but it just had such a great flow to it. I was like, wow, a little bit taken aback by yeah, how much flow there was in the conversation. Oh,
I'm
so that
lost now.
leads to purpose.
Right, yes. Sense of purpose. Your sense of purpose then drives you to number four, which is mastery. So, mastery is doing something that you need to continually get better at. Things should be challenging enough that you can get better at it, but not too challenging that you get overwhelmed and you burn out and don't want to do it anymore.
In other words, the mastery part of it would be the fine tuning of the skill, whichever skill it is. Because you
Yeah, I mean,
have the skill already. You're aware of how well or good you're able to use the skill. And now you are looking at the finer details
I
of
don't know.
this.
It depends because if you've got a massive life purpose, a huge, huge goal, a world-changing idea, there's going to be many elements to that that maybe you don't know how to do yet, right? If we look at it in terms of language, how many subjects are there that don't come up in regular English teaching? If you think about it, how many
How
people
many?
know
How
how
many?
to speak to a mechanic in English. They're fine doing a negotiation for a law firm,
Yeah,
but
actually.
how many people know how to talk about car engines? I mean,
Like, yeah. It's actually
I
true.
have a basic knowledge of car engines. I know what the terminology is to use with it. I have no idea how to actually do any of the stuff, but I know the language associated to it.
Yeah.
That's just
No,
one example. How many examples, how many topics, subject areas that can you dive into? Okay, to reach your goal, how many of these subject areas do I need to learn about to get to that point, to feel comfortable in that environment? So there are many different aspects of the language that you will need to master. So it's not just fine tuning. Perhaps it's starting completely anew because it's a subject that you've never even considered before.
well, I
Maybe
wouldn't.
what you're doing is maybe you actually need to do extra training, but you need to do that training in English, and therefore you need to study completely in English.
I
That's
mean,
a whole new skill as well.
I don't know if I agree here.
Okay.
Mastery, the word, if I had looked it up in the dictionary, it probably goes along the lines of someone who's already good at something and is getting better at this thing that they're already much, very good at.
Hmm.
So I would say fine tuning because at that level, even though my knowledge right now, for example, let's talk, say space exploration. That's not a topic that I'm well versed in. I'm not very knowledgeable about it because it doesn't interest me as much as other topics. It's not to say it
Hmm.
doesn't interest me, but in comparison to other topics, clearly there are other things that interest me more. And in those things, I know a lot more, right? Now, I have enough language to be able to understand basic things about space exploration.
Hmm.
I don't need to learn the entire sector in order to be able to follow discussion in relation to it. I have enough existing knowledge of language to follow a discussion with limited gaps in between.
Yeah.
Therefore, I would be just adding on to what I
No, no,
already
no.
know.
Therefore, you're in curiosity stage. You're not in mastery.
Yes, yes, but mastery in relation to language in general, this is what I thought we were talking about,
Yeah.
right?
I see what you're saying. Okay. You're saying that you're coming to mastery with a certain depth of skill and knowledge, and
Yeah.
you're fine
I'm
tuning.
not sure. Yeah,
What
I'm
I'm
not sure
saying
you
is
can have.
I don't think fine tuning is the correct phrase because fine tuning is going from 95 to 96%. Mastery stage for me would probably start around 60%. So you've still got a lot to learn.
For me, mastery is anything from 85, 90%. Anything prior to that is
It depends
you
what
still,
stage in
yeah,
your journey you're at. You think about martial arts, for example. Masters of martial arts, they take 30 or 40 years to become a master.
30, 40 years.
Maybe not that
And
long. Okay,
I
but
mean,
we're talking about years. We're not talking
just,
about
yeah,
they don't get to black belt and then it's just fine tuning to become a master. They get to black belt and then the journey truly begins because you begin teaching and you begin understanding all of the things that you've learned in a different way, and then you relearn it and then you relearn it. That final 10% takes years and years and years, but actually the first 90% takes years and years and years as well. So it's all comparative, whatever way you want to look at it, whatever knowledge that you have, it's the idea that I can still continue to get better and understand more. That's the idea of
yeah,
mastery.
it's curiosity because you don't stop being curious. If you want to master something, it means the curiosity is never really fulfilled. Question of the week. Which of the five motivational pillars is the most important to you?
We'd love to hear what you think. So remember, leave a comment in the box below so we can keep the conversation going. Thanks.
I'm working with someone right now who's easily a B2.5 C1, so upper intermediate speaker. His
Hmm.
curiosity has now led him to, well, to understanding that he has problems with certain accents. So now he purposely, quite intentionally, looks for podcasts aimed at, um, yeah, giving him an opportunity to listen to a particular accent. Right now, this is gonna surprise you. It
Hmm.
surprised me definitely. The accent that he's realized that is a bit difficult for him to sort of understand is Welsh. So now he's just scouring the internet. I know for content made by anyone with a Welsh accent.
Okay,
So yeah,
okay.
like
Welsh is, yeah, it's a challenge. It, Welsh is very melodic.
it's similar to the Irish accent to some degree. It's the
Well,
Irish is a bit sing-songy
the
as well.
the Welsh, the
Yeah,
Scottish, the Irish were all
Celtic,
Celtic
yeah,
nations.
Celtic, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
he's at that level where,
mm,
provided it's an accent that he's quite familiar with, so English, American, the standard accents, once listening to the podcast once from half an hour to about an hour and a half is enough for him. He doesn't need to
yeah,
repeat it.
yeah.
But his curiosity led him to realize that, oh, actually, with certain accents, I have issues. And this is where what he's doing now,
Mm.
looking to work on that. He had identified the
I,
British one before as one that was like that, the English,
yeah.
specifically English.
Mhm.
And so he went through a stage
But
where he
but
was
then
consuming a lot of that.
which part of England?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
There are the huge differences between someone who's from London and someone who's from Newcastle, for example.
Yeah.
This ties into all of it. It's the curiosity to understand different speakers in English, of which there are many, especially in an international business environment, not just from the UK, but from all around the world. The curiosity turns into a passion to understand the sound of English. That then, in
Yes.
turn,
Now
turns
you're
to
speaking.
mastering,
Yeah.
understanding all of the different English speakers. It's
You
become
had
his
me at the
purpose.
sound of English, man. After that, I was just like, the sound of language for me, the sound, yeah,
Yeah.
it's how I make sense of languages firstly, just to try
Mhm.
it, as I've said before.
Exactly. And when you start looking at accents, it's as simple as understanding one area of the country, world, whatever, does with a vowel sound in comparison to what you would expect to hear from that vowel sound. When you start exploring, okay, maybe I can start looking at phonemes. Phonemes are the symbolic version of what the sounds in English are. Okay, well, if I can understand the phonemes, I can then understand how any word is pronounced. I can understand how any accent changes the sound, and you start getting into the phonemics of the language. You start your pronunciation improves, your listening comprehension improves, and it has a knock-on effect on your confidence, on your mindset. You're no longer worried about different types of accents because you can identify the sound and go, okay, that they're just using that sound instead of this, right? But that all
Like
comes from being curious about different accents.
something that's really great as well for motivation, I found is finding, comparing your base language, your own native language with English.
Mm-hmm.
One, it reaffirms the things that you already know about both languages. And two, it then allows you to go a little bit deeper into the details, like things like sounds. It's
Mm-hmm.
when you compare maybe your language and English that you realize, I might be having issues with this sound because in my language that sound does not exist. I'll use exam in Italian as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Gn, GN in Italian
Ugh.
is the sound is yeah, gnocchi.
Or the
Okay.
gnocchi, yeah. Or
That's
the
just
the GL. Yeah.
li, li,
Yeah. Ye.
li,
Ye.
li.
Yeah. Hey.
See, Li.
Hush. Yeah.
Okay. So that is a sound that does not exist in English. So simple exercise like that,
Mm-hmm.
comparing your own language to the language of English can be insightful in understanding why you may be having issues or difficulties with certain sounds or certain words or verbs or actions and so on. So
Uh,
in
yeah,
doing so,
I
go
agree.
ahead.
FYI, English is always easier than your own language. Grammatically, at least. There you go. Spoiler alert.
Oh man, I didn't see that one coming.
It's 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 always easier until you get to upper intermediate, but that's why we're here.
So that's encouraging. If you
Yeah.
starting at A1 or A2, just know that to get to B1 won't take you much time,
There's
maybe
no
hundred
A1,
hours.
A2s listening to this podcast, Ramps. Come on. That's not why we're here. Unfortunately, guys, it's the exact opposite. You've got to this point. Well done. Now it gets harder.
Yeah. Oh man, but no, I didn't see that one coming, man. When you say really, uh, yeah, yeah, I think especially if your language is maybe from my knowledge, from what I know, if it's a Latin-based language, yes, grammar in English is a lot simpler than than in those languages. But as I said, yes, comparing can lead to really some insightful things.
Yeah.
Language in sound, grammar, word
Yeah,
choice as
there's
well.
lots of things that you can dissect
Yeah.
within language. Um, we've spoken extensively about curiosity. I know that's something that's really important to you, and I absolutely agree. But for me, actually, I find purpose is the biggest motivator.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I have to feel like what I'm doing is contributing to a greater good, that everything is going in a direction, whether that's personally, personally contributing to my values and principles, or the what the work that we're doing is contributing to the greater good outside of the company.
Yeah.
If I'm not in contact with that, it's very difficult for me to remain motivated. At the same time, I can do boring, tedious, uninteresting work, as far as I'm concerned, for an extended period of time, as long as I know that actually there is a pathway that is leading somewhere. And I think that that is part of, we mentioned earlier about understanding your why. Why am I doing this? And I think that's an incredibly strong driver for a lot of people. you
Yes.
kind you kind of
Yes.
you're jumping a little bit ahead, but if you understand your why and that's very clear to you, then curiosity is easy to develop. And if curiosity is easy to develop, you're able to go up the ladder in terms of
Okay.
the different parts of motivation.
When I have the purpose in mind, I often try to think too far ahead.
Right.
If I just follow my curiosity, I find that I remain in the present with the purpose in mind, right?
If you
So,
follow your curiosity, you go down a YouTube rabbit hole and you
yeah,
don't come
that's
out for a few hours, and then you're not actually on topic anymore.
that's also true.
Don't you lie to me, brother.
You know me too well, man.
I
We know
do, I
each other
do. I know
too
you
well.
very well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That is true. But it does help me remain in the present because I'm curious about the subject. I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the subject.
So
Like
so deep, in fact, you come out the other side looking at videos completely unrelated
maybe I'm guilty of that from time to time.
from time
But
to time. Yeah.
from time to time, that's my
I
story and I'm
I
sticking
think
to
we're
it.
all guilty of that from time to time, but we
Uh,
always start with the best of intentions.
let's look at some of the language that we've used in today's conversation so far.
Brilliant.
What have you got written down? I've got a few.
I got a few as yep. The first one I want to draw attention to, which people may know, but I think is an important language point, is FYI. So FYI is an acronym. It stands for your information. But the important thing about acronyms is when you see capital letters that stand for longer words grouped together like that, it's important to say each letter individually. A good example is Chief Executive Officer is CEO. For your information is FYI. Most of the time, there are some exceptions, but most of the time we say each letter individually.
The exception that I thought of now is, of course, ASAP.
ASAP, yes, but it was before it was ASAP, it was ASAP.
I think texting,
RSVP is another one, right?
yeah. I think
Mm.
what happened with ASAP is texting language. It was used so much through texting that people just started reading it as it was written
Yeah,
because people were not writing it probably in caps.
yeah. Exactly. I'm sure there's a whole generation of people who don't even know what ASAP means in its entirety, but they understand the situation to use it in.
Yep.
So,
All right. So I have one here to feed into.
okay.
Would you like to explain that one? You actually use that.
I
You were
used
talking
it.
about the pillars, the 5 pillars of motivation.
Okay, so to feed into something it can be used a couple of different ways.
I would say when something feeds into another thing, it means that it adds to it.
Right,
So
okay.
when you were talking about the 5 foundations of motivation theory, you were talking about how each not foundation, pardon, you use the word you use was pillar, how each pillar adds on to the next pillar and so
Right.
on and so
Yeah,
on. So they
it's
feed
about
into
having
each other.
influence on something. In
Yes,
it
and
and
usually in a positive way,
influence
making it bigger. Yes,
an influence on the development of something. So in this
exactly.
example with the 5 pillars, we were saying curiosity feeds into passion because it's influencing what you become passionate about.
Have you got another one written down?
Oh, I've got a good one. You used stand corrected.
Oh, yes. I said I stand corrected. I think this is when we were talking about the origins of Irish, Welsh, and Scottish.
Ah, yeah, we're talking about
Um,
Celtic versus
um,
Celtic.
yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Yes, I stand corrected is an idiom. It is used to express or to say that what I said before is incorrect. What is the correct thing is this. So it's admitting that you made a mistake and you are rectifying the mistake. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. It is 7 o'clock, not 8 o'clock, as in the
Yeah,
example.
very nice. All right, what else have we got?
Go down a rabbit hole. That's when we were
Mm.
speaking about the
Yeah,
curiosity, the
your
effects of
your view.
following my curiosity.
Yeah. So, to go down a rabbit hole is a very simple one to explain because if you've ever seen Alice in Wonderland, you'll understand that you go from one world very deeply into another world through the rabbit hole. So it's about getting lost in information or anything really.
Another point to make is that it's not uncommon, by the way, to find like visual representations of idiomatic expressions in children films. When I've noticed more and more of these as I watch films with my son.
The thing I love about kids movies as well is there's very often they play with the language, they play with
Yeah,
English in the full
yeah.
knowledge that to the
Children won't
kids it's
understand.
part of the
Yeah,
story, but for the parents,
exactly.
we're
Yeah,
we're gonna get a little chuckle out of it.
yeah.
A,
The
a
kids are
chuckle
watching
is
like,
like a
what's
little
all?
laugh, yeah.
I have another one.
Okay.
Scouring is another one I
Oh,
wrote
right,
down.
okay. So
Yeah, this, yes.
this is an interesting verb because there's two ways to use it.
Yes.
Two ways that I can think of. There's probably more. The first way, which is not appropriate to our conversation, is to scour something is like to scrub it really hard. If you do a Sunday dinner of any sorts and you have lots of oil
Exactly.
and fat that has stuck to the bottom of the pan, you might use iron wool to scour the pan to get rid of all of
Ah,
the
yes.
excess food.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. But the other way,
Uh,
though, the way that we used it,
it's a different, yeah, it's the second definition. Same verb, but
mhm.
different meaning. Do you want to explain the second one as well?
Okay, so
So the second one
second
is,
meaning to scour for something or you're
I'll give you a
scout.
bit of context.
Yeah.
I was talking about a client of mine who is looking very specifically
Hmm.
for podcasts in a particular accent.
So they were scouring the internet for
Exactly.
this particular accent. Yeah. So
Yes.
searching for a place or a thing very carefully and completely.
And thoroughly in order to find something very specific.
Yes. Yes,
All right.
exactly.
Uh,
Good. All right. I've got one
so
for you.
that you go on.
I
Okay.
got one for you.
Which one?
Piece of the puzzle.
Piece of the puzzle. This is a very nice one. I think it's the reason why I like this one is it's one of those that conjures up images in your mind, piece of the puzzle. And if you know the words individually, you can immediately make out what it means, right? So piece
Mhm.
of the puzzle is an idiomatic expression, and it means that as part of a bigger thing.
In my mind, it's referring to a jigsaw puzzle because jigsaw puzzles come
Jigsaws.
in because a jigsaw puzzle is not complete until all the pieces are in the right place.
Yes. I
Okay.
think that's pretty much it. So that brings us to the end of the language section. Thanks for yet another great conversation, Liam. Lots of laughter today, and of course, lots of learning. So thanks, man, and
You're welcome.
enjoy the rest of the day. Cheers.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And my pleasure also getting to share this time with you guys. Thank you very much. We will see you next week. Ciao for now.
Cheers. Ciao. All right.